We're working on Sukkot, and I'm going to continue to look at the commands in the Torah for this holiday. Um, we have talked about the idea that we're supposed to, what days this is supposed to be, that we're supposed to be dwelling in booths during that time. Let's move on to talking about taking up the 4 species. This is in Leviticus 23:40. And it says, "You shall take you on the first day the boughs of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice toward the face of Yahweh your Elohim 7 days." Okay, in Jewish tradition, each of these 4 species is identified as a specific tree. However, they describe categories of trees, and so anything in the category will suffice. And this is particularly important for us because of the fact that these are these Jewish specific species are from Israel. So if you tried to go out in your yard here, you're probably not going to find these. So the first one is goodly trees, literally fruit of a tree of honor. A tree of honor means that it's a tree that's not poisonous. Okay, so any fruit is going to suffice for that. In Jewish tradition, the etrog is the fruit that is used, which it looks very much like a lemon. The next one is branches of palm trees, literally palm of the tamarind, meaning a palm branch from a date palm, specifically lulav, the date palm. Okay, so and the reason that I'm saying this is because if you read any Jewish sources, they're going to talk about the idea of the etrog and the lulav. Okay, the etrog is the fruit, and the lulav is the branches that are put together. Okay, the third one is boughs of thick trees, meaning a branch of an interwoven tree or flexible branches. Okay, specifically by tradition, it is a myrtle. The fourth one is the willows of the brook, meaning a tree that grows by a river, referring to poplars or willows, specifically by tradition. Aravot, or willow. Okay. Now let's think about these species in regard to the context that we have right here. Okay, this is verse 40, right? In 42, it says, "You shall dwell in booths 7 days." So what I'm getting out of this is that these are things that you would use to make a sukkah. And when it says take up, it means to gather these items for the purpose of building a sukkah. And think about that. The fruit is used for decoration and also for eating, obviously. The palm branches are good for a roof. Okay, the interwoven tree, the boughs of thick trees, is talking about interwoven or flexible trees. In other words, these are viney type of things that you could use to tie the thing together. And then the willows of the brook would be wood that you would use for, say, the walls or the structure of the thing. And so, in other words, you can make a sukkah out of these items. And I think that that's what it's really talking about. Now, traditionally, some sources, some Jewish sources, say that you're supposed to pick up the items and turn them upside down and turn them right side up and so forth. And this is emphasizing the idea of picking them up, which is what the command is, literally. The other tradition that you find in Judaism is to make it into a wave offering. So they take the fruit and then they take the other, the branches, the three branches, and they tie those together. And they put them together. They take the fruit and then they take the branches and they put them together and then they start waving them. And then they wave them in all four directions. And there is a blessing that goes with this, which is the blessing for the wave offering. I'm going to read this blessing to you so you know what I'm talking about. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us through his commandments, commanding us concerning the waving of the palm branch. Now that command that it's referring to is Talmud, not Torah. Okay? Because you saw in the command that it says take up. It doesn't say anything about waving it. Now, what is a wave offering? Well, a wave offering is where you're going to lift something up and wave it. Okay? But we read in Deuteronomy 12 that all of the offerings have to be done in Jerusalem. Well, this holiday is supposed to be done in Jerusalem, so you could probably do a wave offering as a part of this holiday if you wanted to, but it's not commanded. Okay? So this is where the tradition comes from, I suppose. But to do that outside of Jerusalem is a no-no, according to the Torah. We cannot do a wave offering outside of Jerusalem. Deuteronomy 12. So, if you think that this is talking about a wave offering in terms of tradition, then you cannot do that unless you go to Jerusalem to do it. Another big tradition in Judaism is to get a very superb specimen of the etrog and the lulav for the purpose of the sacrifice. It's a sacrifice, right? For the and we know that the sacrifices, they had to be without blemish, right? So you have to inspect it, and they make a big deal about this. Well, I don't think that that is really what's going on. I think that it has to be without blemish, meaning that it's symbolic of righteousness, perfect righteousness, complete righteousness. Okay, so it can't have any blemishes, but that is talking about the animals specifically, that command. There is no command concerning that here in dealing with the fruit. And why is that? Well, I think the reason for that is because fruit was given to us to eat, meaning that when you have a fruit, blemished or not, it is supposed to be good for eating. But generally, you want to have something that is good. But the problem with this tradition is that this is assuming that this particular 4 species is a sacrifice. Well, you can only do sacrifices in Jerusalem. So if you're outside of Jerusalem, this can't be a sacrifice. Now, we are supposed to be doing it in Jerusalem, so I suppose it could be a sacrifice in terms of that, an offering to God. And there is the way of offering that you do in Jerusalem. So this could be referring to that, but we cannot do that part of the thing because of the fact that we are not in Jerusalem. Okay, let's talk about Thanksgiving. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 10, it says, "When you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you." This is telling us that when we finish our meals, we're supposed to be thanking God for our meals. Thank you, Father, for filling us and satisfying us, right? Which is interesting because generally the tradition is to bless God before the meal, and we generally skip it after the meal, but the command here is to do it after the meal. But you'll notice that this is connected to the idea of getting a harvest in the land, which is exactly what Sukkot is about. Sukkot is talking about receiving the harvest. You get the harvest in, and then you dwell in tents with God. In other words, you are thanking God by having time with Him for the harvest of the land. And again, this is something that we cannot do outside the land. Obviously, we're not getting a harvest from the land if we're outside of the land. But when we do eat, we should be thanking God after we eat, or blessing Him. It says bless specifically. And that's an interesting thing. In Judaism, you see, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth." Okay, rather than the Christian tradition, which is "Thank you, Father, for this food, and bless it to the nourishment of our bodies." Right? Well, on the Christian side, what they're doing is they're thanking God for the food, right? On the Judaism side, they are blessing God for the food. So what's the difference? Well, the Christian thanksgiving is emphasizing the food, whereas the Jewish blessing is emphasizing the giver of the food, which is God. In other words, it's talking about the idea that we are enjoying the presence of God as a part of eating, which I think is a very nice idea that, to think about. Okay, so in other words, the Sukkot is about blessing God. In other words, spending time with God, enjoying His presence. And the harvest is a big part of that. When we enjoy eating from the harvest, that is a part of our enjoyment of God, of His presence. Okay, so that completes the commands in the Torah about Sukkot. And in the next video, we will talk about the symbolism that's involved here.